Time to bring in Coach Sal for his pregame salutations. And Coach, I know that we do a great job of breaking down the game prior. And I think before I want to go forward, I want to look back. What did you like and what did you not like about last week's game against the Argonauts?
Well, Bubba, I think there was a couple of things in that game that were depressing, if you will. The 2 interceptions in the red zone. Those are things you cannot do, you know. Obviously, if you go back and you look at what the keys to the game that Andy put out, okay, his keys in that game were discipline, tackling, and win the turnover battle. A lack of discipline, poor tackling, and a loss in the turnover battle. That demanded that you're not going to win the ball game. And Eddie was absolutely correct in what he was saying with his keys.
Oh, stop. Oh, stop.
What did you like, though?
Well, what I liked about, you know, it's hard for me to think that you can go into Toronto and not play a physical ball game. You know, you've got to be physical when you go to Toronto, especially because they're going to be. And so what I did like about it was they came back in the ball game and really put themselves in a position to play that way. You know, they weren't as disciplined as you want them to be, but at the same time, you've got to hit if you're going to win a game in Toronto.
Well, a position that does a lot of hitting, had a lot of moves, and no better person to talk about it, the offensive line. Can you just break it down for us?
Well, first of all, the fans better get a program if they want to know what's going on. You know, we got 4 offensive linemen on the 6th game. The left tackle, Figueroa, is out. Last week's right tackle, Kemp, will move to the left side. And Dayton Black, our first-round draft pick, will move into the right guard spot for injured Colton or Mannings. And
Coulter, yeah.
Kendrick Sardo comes off the practice roster to start at the right tackle. So only Revenberg and Beard are in their normal position. Now, Chris Van Zyl was taken off the 6th game to be the backup. And the backup to the backup is going to be Casey Sales coming over from the defensive side. So all in all, you know, if you're looking for continuity in the line, you have to question whether or not we're going to have it.
So what would be your approach to get these guys settled in and get some momentum with that offensive line?
Well, I think last week Butler ran the ball very well, and we should have mentioned him in the beginning. You know, he had 60 yards rushing the football. He had 57 yards catching the football. The thing that you're going to have to do tonight is continue that trend. And at the same time, I really think Schultz opens up the playbook because he's been here. He understands what the coordinator wants, and he understands the concepts of the plays. So he should have a wide open book, and we should see a lot of quick throws out of the backfield, and we should see him use his legs to gain some ground.
Yeah, I think he brings a new dynamic to this offense, and when you're struggling being a pocket passer in the season so far, I think that adding a new dynamic can help you gain some momentum and just things start falling in place. It's kind of like a flywheel, right? Once you get moving, it's much harder to stop instead of feeling that pressure of, you have a little bit of success down the field, interception, you just can't finish, and the pressure builds up and builds up instead of the other way where mistakes can happen and not really affect you when you've got that flywheel going and that momentum going.
Yeah, and you know, to go back to the game in Toronto, you know, Taranowski had a poor block in the situation, but at the same time, he's the guy that caught the touchdown in the end zone, a very great catch, 1 foot in bounds, high over his head. Then he catches a 2-point pass in the end zone. So, you know, I think there are a lot of good things to build on. There are a lot of new faces that we're going to see tonight, but at the same time, their spirit is up. I think their pride is wounded, and that tells me they should play a good game.
Yeah, I mean, speaking about that hit on Tim White where Tarnowski missed the block, we talked to Duke after the game, and I thought he really said it well about the emotions were high, and we're all boys. We're trying to do this thing together, and it's not going to affect them. No, it's no internal feud, but it's a great learning opportunity because these guys haven't played together. Ternowski and Duke were both injured a lot of different times throughout training camp, and they're out there trying to, navigate their blocking responsibilities against cut coverage on automatic short behind the line of scrimmage throw to Tim White. And, with Ternowski in an away game, he's got to be looking in at the ball to see when it's snapped if he can't hear it. I don't know how loud exactly it was in Toronto, but if he is losing leverage on his player, for one, he's got to maintain that inside leverage, but the other option would be to communicate with Duke and maybe switch responsibilities on that blocking assignment, and then that play never happens, and maybe it's a successful, successful play. So I think it's a great learning opportunity as long as there's no adverse effects on Tim White for that actual hit.
Yeah, and that after every game there's a breakdown of everything that happens. And I'm sure when the offensive coordinator sat with the quarterback and said, what do you like this week? White raised his hand and said, there's one play I'd like to throw out. The one I got blasted on in there, Let's move on to something else. But you're right in your assessment of what happened.
Yeah, well, we can move on to the current game, and let's stick with Tim White. He clearly was frustrated with his lack of use last game, but you and I spoke before the game thinking, okay, well, it was clear he was being targeted against Winnipeg, and that wasn't working, so let's get the other guys involved. And I thought overall it was a better balanced offense. But what do we got to do to get Tim White involved, but also get the other guys involved?
Well, I think, number one, the offense has got to control the ball and the clock, and not turn that ball over. The 2 turnovers, as we talked about, were very important. But I think they have to establish that they'll run the ball, they'll screen the ball, and they'll throw the ball deep. All of those things in combination, but at the same time, pick your spots. If you can get 8 yards on a run it again. If you only get 3 yards, you're forced to throw the ball. So, at the same time, it's going to come down to game plan, but the book's wide open for Schultz. He's been here. He understands the quarterback situation.
And that's something I got to ask you about Matt Schultz. There are teams in the league where your QB number 1 and your QB number 2, there is a vast difference of experience, ability to execute plays. Not the situation with this team.
No, I don't think it is at all. I don't think there's any fall off at all when you go to Matt Schultz. And he proved that in the game in Toronto. He went 13 for 14. He threw the touchdown. He threw the 2-point in that game. So I have every faith that he will control things tonight much better than what we've had in the first 2 games.
Well, wait a minute. I mean, I love Matthew Schultz as a person and a player, but when you say no fall off, you're talking about the winningest quarterback in the history of this league.
I am talking about the first 2 games of this year. I agree with you that Bo Levi Mitchell is a Hall of Fame quarterback, but he did not play Hall of Fame game in the first 2 games. So I don't think there's a fall off at this particular time.
Fair enough. I think that's well said. Then you look at the defense tonight for the Ticats. Lawrence Woods III is back in at that field corner position and going to handle the returning duties. Otherwise, same starting lineup. What did you like? What do you think about that? What do you like about them?
Well, I think number one, the defense has got to tighten up. In the 2 games previous, of the 29 possessions, the defense gave up 13 scoring opportunities. They had 8 TDs and 5 field goals against them. So they've got to tighten up in that particular area. And they did pick on the newcomer each time they put him on the corner. So having Woods back makes a big difference, in my opinion.
Well, how can you just say tighten up? Like, what do you need to do to achieve that?
Well, number one, you've got to get a pass rush up front. That's number one. Fajardo was sacked 6 times in the Red Blacks game. And their Red Blacks defense was able to put pressure on them. That's got to be number one to help defend the secondary people. Secondary people, you've got to contest every ball that's coming your way. If you get a penalty call against you, so be it. But I think you've got to show that you're going to tighten up on that corner and tighten up in the secondary. And, of course, we've got one guy in there, Adeleke, who's still a game-time decision for this game, which would be a detriment to that defense.
we always, fans in football, you always talk about complementary football, but it really is so true. We already kind of discussed momentum on the offensive side and how mistakes can get washed under the rug a bit if you have that momentum. And, we talked about turnovers and what happens when we get turnovers. Well, it always seems like they drive all the way down and score. And it really is that the defense, if the offense can stay on the field, get first downs, put points on the board, the defense is fresh, they can provide more opportunities. We can spread the ball around. Everybody's getting their touches. And it really does work all together, doesn't it? Special teams needs to play well. Don't give up any hidden yardage and penalties and all that garbage. Isn't it wild how football's like that?
Well, you got to win 2 of the 3 phases: offense, defense, and special teams. If you can win 2 of the 3 phases, you'll win the football game more times than not. You cannot afford not to pick up, as you say, there's a turnover. Let's say our defense all of a sudden gets a takeaway. That offense has got to go down the field and score points off of that takeaway. If the offense gives the ball away, the defense has to tighten up and not allow that to happen.
Can I bring up something? I mean, you just talked about Fajardo giving up those 6 sacks. We've got 2 sacks as a team so far right now. And I'm looking at this lineup and these men: Diallo, Davis, Sales, Carney, Bennett, Frederico, Kongbo, who was a late addition. What are they going to do to raise that number and really help out the secondary by getting more pressure on the quarterback?
Well, if you saw the game last night, Winnipeg and BC, you saw what a defense can do against an offensive line that's not ready to play. I mean, Bryant is the best offensive tackle in the league 2 years in a row. He gets beat at least 3 times in the ball game. Collaros gets sacked 6 or 7 times in the ball game. You've got to be able to come off that football and go for it. And that's where I think Carney and Davis on the 2 ends have really got to put some pressure on. In the middle, those 2 guys in the middle that you mentioned, Sales and Diallo and Laurent, they've got to push that pocket back and force that quarterback to step outside into the hard pass rush by the defensive ends.
But with Fajardo, he's the kind of guy that he seems to sometimes benefit from that pressure with his running ability.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to take off with the football. Do you want him to take off with the football, or do you want him to go 40 yards downfield to Mac? So to me, I'd rather put the pressure on him, force him to run the football, and get maybe 6, 7, 8 yards, whatever. But you can contain him. That's not impossible. If you get a good push up front, the outside 2 guys can contain him.
You think we're going to see some more edge blitzing, whether it's Simone or Chris Edwards or even some of the defensive backs coming at Cody from the side?
I'd love to see some of that will halfback type blitz off the end, which puts that offensive tackle in a position. Who do I take? Do I take the inside guy? Yes, I take him. Now the back in the backfield for Montreal has to take the outside guy. So you've taken 2 things. One, you've taken a receiver possibility of the back out of the picture. He's got a block out there on that end. And that kind of pressure will force the quarterback to throw the ball quickly. So all in all, yes, I agree with you. And I would like to see more of the halfback safety type blitzes in the ball game. We know that they have it in their arsenal. Let's turn it loose.
Andy talked about complementary football, and you talked about all 3 aspects of the game: and offense, defense, and special teams. And special teams, we could see I don't know if it's an improvement, because I thought Gallimore did a decent job of returning kicks. But I want to talk about the kicking department right now with Mark Leggio right now, kind of in a pressure situation, in the fact that he's playing his 2nd game as a Tiger-Cat, really had no working with the team in his 1st game, and now he's got to perform in front of the home crowd on a day where special teams, because of this unknown rain, might be a big factor.
You're right, Bubba. And, special teams need 2 things for me. Number one, they got to stay away from committing penalties. 2 games, they've got 11 penalties on the special team side. That's way too many penalties on that side of the ball. Now, Montreal has been perfect in their 1st game. They were 4 for 4 in the field goals. They punted 8 times. 5 times the punter kicked it over 50 yards, 50 plus. What that tells me is Williams back there is going to get an opportunity for a return, because 50 plus yards, you're out kicking your cover team. And if we can get our guys back there and knock those gunners off, we got an opportunity for a big play coming out of special. Leggio has played in this league. He should be able to handle this kind of pressure and this kind of weather.
Yeah, Lawrence Woods, we've all seen what he can do, and very dangerous and electric, and that would be a great boost for this team and this crowd. And that was a great question, Bubba, because Montreal was plus 14 yards on average drive starting position. Does that make sense? Yeah. Average drive starting position against Ottawa. And that is going to be a big stat tonight. So one way or another, whether it's lack of discipline, good blocking and good returning, having the actual kick itself, the punts, be well placed and high and have good coverage. But the Ticats have to win that average starting drive position tonight, because that is a lot of non-obvious. That's a non-obvious stat that makes a huge difference in a football game.
And Coach, that was a major problem in the first half for the Tiger-Cats against the Argonauts. I mean, they were in jail starting from their 10 almost, seemingly every drive.
Absolutely. Field position is so important. And when you talk about penalties on special teams, Brandon Banks is going to be honored here tonight. Think back to Grey Cups and what special teams
you can speak on that.
And what kind of pressure there is, and to have a penalty take away a touchdown. And that could happen. But at the same time, you've got to be able to overcome those things and get Woods free in the backfield and give us some field position.
Well, let's flip the script a bit and talk about the receivers. We have a few new faces in this position group as well. We saw the amazing catch by Terry Godwin. We saw a few of those in the preseason and last year. Love to see him get some more opportunities, but we got Richie Sindani, Mr. Preseason Touchdown, one in each game, back off the suspended list. A guy that has been a reliable receiver in this league. It hasn't really been a star by any means, but he certainly is a welcome addition and a target inside. And then Tyreek McAllister comes into the lineup and sort of a receiver / tailback position. What can that add to this offense?
Well, we don't know anything about the McAllister kid because he's just been here a week to play in this ball game. To me, it's got to come down to Williams and Goodwin and White. Those are the guys that you're going to have to get the ball to in this ball game. Sindani is a good, quiet, slippery type receiver who can do well over the middle. And I really think with Duke Williams being what he is, he can catch the ball in the middle. Like you, Andy, he's got height. And he's got long arms, and he's got big hands. So he's got the ability. If you can put the ball in his radius, he should be able to get it.
Just a couple of seconds here, Coach. Last one to you. Again, been on the road, hostile environment. I talked about this with Andy in the top of the broadcast. Hostile environment for the first 2 games. Now you're back in front of your home crowd. And there's something to be said about protecting your home turf.
Oh, you've got to win at home. You've got to make teams that come into your stadium feel the pressure of the stadium. And our fans will do their part. The team has to do their part on the field, give them a lot to cheer about in the ball game. But I really think home field is an advantage. You've got to take advantage of it.
With his pregame salutations, he is Coach John Salavanis. Just an outstanding segment. Thanks for breaking it down with us, Coach.
You're more than welcome, Bubba, Andy.